Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to explore one of the absolute most fascinating, kind of mind-bending realities of the human experience. Have you ever noticed that the deeper you study a subject, the less confident you actually feel about having all the answers? We literally spend our entire lives gathering facts, reading books, and acquiring skills, fully expecting that eventually we're going to reach this glorious summit of absolute certainty. But instead, the horizon just keeps expanding. So today, we're going to unpack the incredible relationship between learning and ignorance and why embracing what you don't know might just be the smartest thing you can possibly do.
So, why does learning more make us feel like we know less? It's a beautifully provocative question, isn't it? Think of this explainer as an intimate fireside chat about the very limits of human understanding. We're going to journey from ancient philosophy to modern psychology and even into the mathematics of how knowledge actually grows. We'll explore why true expertise often feels way less like a triumphant victory and a lot more like a humbling realization of the vastness of the universe.
And this brilliantly illustrates the whole concept using a simple geometric metaphor. Picture your knowledge as a circle. The area inside represents everything you currently understand. Now, the perimeter of that circle, the circumference, that represents the boundary where your knowledge meets the unknown. As you learn more, the area of your circle grows. But think about what happens to the circumference. It gets larger too. As our knowledge expands, our contact with the unknown actually accelerates. It grows larger. Every single new discovery merely reveals a dozen brand new questions. It's exactly like climbing a mountain, only to reach the peak and see 100 taller mountains stretching out right before you.
Act 1. The context. Anchoring in ancient wisdom. To truly wrap our heads around this paradox, we need to step back from the geometric models and trace the roots of this idea all the way back to the bustling streets of ancient Athens.
You've probably heard this famous phrase, "I know that I know nothing." It comes from Plato's account of the philosopher Socrates. The story goes that the Oracle of Delphi, who is basically the ultimate authority in ancient Greece, declared Socrates to be the absolute wisest man in Athens. And Socrates was completely baffled by this. No way, right? So he set out to question the politicians, the poets, and the craftsmen of his day, basically to prove the oracle wrong. But through his rigorous questioning, he discovered something profound. All these so-called experts falsely believed they knew things they actually didn't. Socrates realized the oracle was right all along, but only because his wisdom came solely from admitting his profound ignorance. He didn't pretend to know what he didn't know.
Now, let's bring that ancient philosophy directly into our modern lived experience. This brings us to a guiding philosophy from a newsletter author we affectionately call Papa. Papa notes that, despite a wealth of knowledge gathered through a lifetime of hard work, travel, and just simple living, the more he uncovers, the more he understands how incredibly limited his knowledge truly is. It's such a warm human realization. As Papa notes, to truly embrace lifelong learning, one must have the humility to acknowledge their own shortcomings. It can definitely be a tough pill to swallow, but it is the absolute prerequisite for continuous growth.
So, the crucial point is that true wisdom is not some loud, arrogant declaration of facts. It is the quiet realization of the vastness of our ignorance. This completely reframes how we view what we don't know. The unknown isn't a failure of our intellect. It is the essential, beautiful starting line for genuine discovery.
Moving into Act 2, the tension. Let's look at the science of ignorance. Living with this realization isn't always easy, is it? It creates a real psychological tension within us as we try to navigate the mental tug-of-war between false confidence and genuine, doubtful expertise.
I mean, have you ever noticed how the most uninformed people in a room are often the loudest? We see this literally every single day. The loud, rigid certainty of the novice pitted against the quiet, curious hesitation of the true expert. The novice learns one or two facts and instantly believes they've completely mastered the entire field. The expert, on the other hand, sees the infinite nuance. They see the exceptions to the rules, and they are painfully aware of the missing data. Psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger actually formally identified this phenomenon in 1999, and it's now famously known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. It describes this wild dual burden phenomenon. People who are unskilled at a specific task not only lack the skill itself, but they also lack the metacognitive ability, the self-awareness, to even recognize that they lack it. As David Dunning famously quipped, the first rule of the Dunning-Kruger Club is you don't know you're a member. Because they literally can't see the qualitative difference between good and bad performance, they just assume they're doing great.
Now, what's really interesting here is how this phenomenon scales up even to the absolute highest levels of scientific theory.
Take this abstract from a fascinating paper by Bruno Berlando titled The Knowledge Paradox: Why Knowing More is Knowing Less. Berlando introduces a formal academic view that our very concepts, the mental tools we use to understand the universe, are always a step away from actual reality.
Berlando argues that because we use concepts to categorize the world, we are entirely forced to simplify it, and this simplification suffers from what philosophers call the Socratic paradox, or the paradox of inherent vagueness. Think about a tadpole turning into a frog. At what exact microscopic second does it stop being a tadpole and become a frog? You can't draw a perfect line. All scientific concepts share this fuzziness. The deeper we analyze, whether it's the boundaries of a biological cell or the quantum nature of space and time, the blurrier those boundaries become. Absolute certainty just slips right through our fingers the harder we squeeze.
Act 3. The connection. Living with intellectual humility. We've talked a lot about ancient philosophy and theoretical cognitive science, but how does this connect to your morning commute, your workplace, or your family dinner table? Let's transition into how navigating this paradox applies directly to your everyday life. The practical application of the knowledge paradox is a trait psychologists call intellectual humility. Now, to be super clear here, this is not about low self-esteem or crippling self-doubt, not at all. It is simply an accurate, non-defensive view of your own knowledge limits. It's the ability to say, hey, I strongly believe this based on my current evidence, but I am entirely open to recognizing that I might be wrong. You don't feel threatened by the limits of your understanding, you are just comfortably aware of them.
Let's move to and see how this builds into actionable behaviors based on modern psychological research. We can break this down across a few distinct dimensions. First, it can be internal, meaning it's self-directed. This is the quiet, everyday habit of scrutinizing and questioning your own viewpoints. Then, it can be expressed, which is other-directed. This looks like genuinely valuing someone else's opposing perspective during a conversation, rather than just silently waiting for your turn to speak.
And embracing this mindset has tangible, incredibly powerful benefits in the real world. Studies consistently show that people high in intellectual humility are vastly better at bridging intense political and social divides because they actually show more tolerance toward ideological opponents. They are also much better at spotting misinformation, for sure. They are way more likely to double-check a fake news headline rather than blindly sharing it. In the workplace, leaders who admit their fallibility foster highly respected servant leadership cultures. By simply having the courage to say, I might be wrong, you repair relationships, you build deep trust, and you turn your failures into rich opportunities to learn.
Finally, the synthesis, navigating the abyss of uncertainty. We've covered a whole lot of ground today. Let's draw together all these narrative threads into a clear synthesis of how you can navigate this beautiful abyss of uncertainty.
Here are your clear, actionable takeaways to really embrace this paradox. First, beware the illusion of the Dunning-Kruger peak. When you learn a little bit about a new topic and suddenly feel like an absolute genius, just gently remind yourself that you are likely just blind to your own ignorance. Second, actively nurture intellectual humility in your daily disagreements. Approach opposing views with curiosity, not defensiveness. Third, adopt a growth mindset. The research shows that viewing intelligence as something that can grow rather than some fixed trait directly boosts your humility. And finally, just accept that true learning has no final finish line. It's an ongoing journey.
I want to leave you with a powerful thought inspired by Papa's lived philosophy. The circumference of the unknown is always going to outpace the area of what you know. So the real question is this: will you let the vastness of the unknown terrify you, or will you embrace it as the ultimate, unending, lifelong adventure? The paradox of knowledge isn't a trap, it's an open invitation to stay infinitely curious. Thank you so much for exploring this with me today, and whatever you do, keep questioning everything.